Space, the final frontier. The iconic words hold a significance far beyond their function as the opening narration of a beloved science fiction series. Star Trek, a cultural phenomenon spanning nearly 6 decades, has transcended the boundaries of entertainment to become a powerful force for social commentary, a beacon of hope for a better future, and a testament to the enduring power of human imagination. But Star Trek is more than a sci-fi show. It's a mission statement for the future, a warning, a promise, a revolution. For almost 6 decades, it has dared to challenge the status quo, push boundaries, and shape reality itself. From the civil rights movement to gender equality, from environmentalism to LGBTQ+ representation, Star Trek has always reflected the progressive movements of its time, often ahead of the curve. But how did a mere science fiction series achieve such cultural significance? And how has Star Trek managed to maintain its relevance and appeal to a mainstream audience while consistently championing progressive ideals? To understand how Star Trek became a force for progress, we have to start with the man behind it all, Gene Roddenberry. A war hero, a lawman, a visionary, his life would shape the future he imagined. Before he became known as the Great Bird of the Galaxy, Roddenberry lived an eventful, impactful life that shaped his vision for Star Trek. Born in 1921, he grew up during the Great Depression, witnessing both hardship and resilience. His time as a World War II bomber pilot exposed him to the devastating cost of war, reinforcing his belief that humanity must evolve beyond violence. After the war, he would join the Los Angeles Police Department, where he encountered corruption and racial injustice firsthand. All of these experiences became the fodder for his storytelling, as he used television to explore themes like justice, leadership, and the moral dilemmas of power. He embraced secular humanism, believing in a future where rationality and cooperation would overcome ignorance and division. This philosophy became the foundation of Star Trek. Roddenberry was also influenced by the science fiction literature of his time, particularly the works of H.G. Wells and Isaac Asimov, who wrote about the intersection of technology, humanity, and ethical dilemmas. This fascination would eventually shape Star Trek's forward-thinking approach to speculative fiction and morality. When he pitched Star Trek to NBC in 1964, he called it Wagon Train to the Stars. But his true aim was to use science fiction as a vehicle for social commentary. And in 1966, despite some skepticism from NBC executives, Star Trek the original series premiered. And from its very first season, Star Trek would defy expectations. At a time when America was still grappling with segregation, Star Trek presented a future of racial and cultural unity. Lieutenant Uhura, played by Nichelle Nichols, was a black woman serving as a high-ranking officer, not a maid or a side character, but an integral part of the crew. Characters like Hikaru Sulu and Pavel Chekhov represented a globalist vision, one where Cold War tensions and racial divisions had been erased. But despite the show's vision of diversity and inclusion, it wasn't always idyllic. At one point, Nichelle Nichols was so frustrated with her character that she seriously considered quitting the show. It was, of all people, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself who encouraged her to stay. King, the self-described Trekkie, told Nichols that she was changing the face of television, and that Star Trek was the first and only television program that presented Black Americans in the way he believed they should be viewed by the world. King would also tell her that it was the only show that he allowed his children to watch at the time. One of the most groundbreaking and controversial moments in the history of the original series, and perhaps American television up to that point, came in 1968 in an episode titled Plato's Stepchildren. This is the episode now known for featuring a kiss between William Shatner's Captain Kirk and Nichols' Lieutenant Uhura, which is often cited as one of the first interracial kisses on American major network television. This scene was groundbreaking, but it was not without its challenges and controversies. Upon learning of the scripted kiss, NBC executives grew concerned about potential backlash, particularly from affiliates in the southern United States. In a country that was deeply divided on the issue of race, the risk-averse network executives feared that the scene might provoke negative reactions from viewers in these regions, and would lean hard on the Trek producers to eliminate the kiss. But Roddenberry held firm to his vision, and after a tense standoff, was able to reach a compromise with NBC executives. Roddenberry and NBC agreed to shoot 2 versions of the episode, one with and one without the interracial kiss. Though Roddenberry had no plans to ever air the compromise version, that was a problem he'd deal with later. When the cast and crew were filming the scene featuring the then controversial kiss, Shatner and Nichols would conspire to ensure the kiss would be included in the final cut. They intentionally flubbed takes of the compromise version of the scene omitting the kiss, making those scenes unusable. As a result, NBC had no choice but to only air the version with the kiss. Despite NBC's concerns, the episode aired on November 22, 1968, to overwhelmingly positive response. Nichelle Nichols would recall that the episode received a huge response. She would later tell how she received only one piece of negative mail from a lone white Southerner with regard to that episode. To this day, there is a Hollywood myth of sorts, traveling in Trekkie circles, that several NBC affiliates in the Deep South refuse to air the episode. In researching this video, however, we found no substantial evidence indicating that any NBC affiliates refused to air the episode. The anticipated controversy did not materialize to the extent feared by the network. The positive reception of the episode underscored a shift in societal attitudes and highlighted Star Trek's role in challenging and transforming cultural norms. Beyond racial progress, the original series also tackled issues like gender, war, and authoritarianism. Episodes like The Enemy Within explored issues of masculinity and aggression, while A Taste of Armageddon critiqued the detachment of modern warfare. Let That Be Your Last Battlefield depicted a society divided by a trivial skin color difference, a veiled reference to the civil rights movement, and the illogic of racial discrimination. Though the show was cancelled after 3 seasons, its audience would continue to grow as the show continued airing in syndication, paving the way for its inevitable return. The Star Trek films, the first of which was released in 1979, would only serve to expand on the franchise's progressive themes. In 1986, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, would once again return the franchise to its progressive roots, delivering a compelling environmental message by highlighting the consequences of species extinction. The film's plot centers on Admiral Kirk and the crew, traveling back in time to 1987 to obtain humpback whales, a species that is extinct in their present day, the 23rd century. Upon its release, the film was lauded for its engaging narrative and timely environmental themes. Critics and audiences appreciated its unique blend of science fiction and advocacy, with some noting that the film's message of conservation remains relevant decades later. In 1991, Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, the last film to star the entire original cast, served as a poignant and timely allegory for the end of the Cold War, mirroring contemporary geopolitical shifts. Facing potential collapse, the Klingons seek peace with their long-standing adversary, the United Federation of Planets. But of course, peace doesn't come easy, and the mission is not without its challenges, as there are those on both sides that are hesitant to set aside their grudges and hate and seek to sabotage the overture. The film's title, referencing Hamlet's undiscovered country soliloquy, symbolizes the uncertain future both factions face as they contemplate a new era of cooperation. The film delves into themes of prejudice, fear of change, and the challenges of reconciliation. Kirk's personal animosity towards Klingons, stemming from his son's death, reflects deep-seated biases that must be overcome to embrace a peaceful future. The narrative critiques the reluctance to abandon entrenched hostilities, emphasizing the necessity of confronting internal prejudices to achieve lasting peace. Upon its release, the film was lauded for its timely commentary and compelling storytelling. Critics praised it as one of the best acted and directed installments in the series, noting its reflection on contemporary issues and its engaging narrative. A lot of the topics and examples we wanted to include today had to be left on the cutting room floor. A lot of the things left out we hope to cover in the future. If you don't want to miss out on the action, please take a second to like this video. and subscribe to The Real Agenda. And please leave a comment down below. Tell us about your favorite Trek series, favorite episodes, and which of the Trek films you dislike most of all, and why. We know that you all have strong opinions, and now is certainly not the time to be shy with them. The 1980s and 90s saw Star Trek double down on its progressive themes with 3 new television series. From the start, The Next Generation carried Roddenberry's vision of a utopian future, one of diplomacy, cooperation, and progress. But it also went further. In the Season 5 episode The Outcast, the series explored LGBTQ rights at a time when few mainstream shows dared to. In their first season finale, The Neutral Zone, they dove headfirst into the issue of class inequality and the implications of adjusting to the 24th century's post-capitalist, post-scarcity utopia. In the 5th season episode Ethics, the show would tackle head-on the subject of medical ethics and an individual's right to die. Another relevant episode is the Season 4 classic, The Drumhead, its theme being a thinly veiled jab at the communist witch hunts and McCarthyism of the mid-20th century. The episode begins with a security breach aboard the Enterprise, leading to an investigation that quickly spirals out of control and threatens the careers and freedom of many aboard the Enterprise, all despite flimsy evidence and investigators with questionable agendas. But these handful of episodes are a mere drop in the proverbial bucket. Each season had many episodes touched on important issues, either telling stories that drew parallels to the challenges of the time, or highlighting the societal contrasts between the 24th century setting for the show and the 20th century world occupied by the show's loyal fans. And Star Trek wasn't done evolving. The hopeful, diplomatic future of The Next Generation soon gave way to something grittier. In 1993, Deep Space Nine arrived, and with it a whole new kind of Star Trek, one where the lines between good and evil were no longer so clear. The franchise that had been largely idealistic and optimistic for its first 25 years would begin exploring some darker themes with Deep Space Nine. One of the series' first examples of this foray into these darker tones began right away with the introduction of the character of Major Kira Nerys. Kira was a former resistance fighter who had spent her life battling the Cardassian occupation of Bajor, a direct parallel to real-world occupation struggles. Kira's struggles paralleled many different real-world resistance movements. Trekkies and scholars have drawn comparisons to World War II partisan resistance groups, Jewish paramilitary groups during the British Mandate in Palestine, and even Afghan Mujahideen, the militant Islamic group that fought the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in the 1980s. But these are just a small handful of the examples referenced. Like these groups, Kira's story was one of fierce loyalty, moral dilemmas, and the struggle between pragmatic diplomacy and the use of force. In several episodes, she grapples with whether the violent tactics she once used were justified, or whether they had simply created an endless cycle of bloodshed. This made Kira one of the most ideologically complex characters in Star Trek. A freedom fighter to some, a terrorist to others, mirroring how resistance movements are perceived differently based on historical context. Despite this, Kira was never depicted as a villain, nor was she an unquestionable hero. Instead, Deep Space Nine treated her story with nuance, showing that even in a universe built on progressive idealism, the messy realities of war, occupation, and resistance cannot be ignored. However viewers felt, Kira's journey made it clear: the galaxy of Star Trek was no utopia. This would begin a theme that was new to Star Trek at the time. The fight for freedom and justice is never truly over. And even in a future where humanity has boldly ventured into the stars, war, poverty, genocide, and injustice persist. And now, in the modern era of Star Trek, they still haven't felt the need to hide or disguise their forward-thinking ideology. With shows like Discovery, Picard, and Strange New Worlds, it continues pushing the envelope, leading by example, as its timeless progressive messages of inclusiveness and tolerance have evolved to reach a whole new generation of Trekkies, and is less subtle than the earlier Trek films and series. Star Trek Discovery fully embraced the franchise's legacy of progressivism, breaking new ground with the introduction of the first openly transgender and non-binary human characters in Trek history. A milestone for LGBTQ+ representation in science fiction. But the show also faced its share of criticism from the nation's conservative press, not only for their modern take on gender identity issues, but also when it chose to feature the Georgia Democratic politician Stacey Abrams as the president of the Federation in its 4th season finale. A debate is ongoing regarding whether this controversy represents a clear shift in the politics of Star Trek or is representative of a more polarized nation, more sensitive to the tropes than generations past. Please take a second to comment down below and tell us how you see the issue. Star Trek Picard took a risk. Gone was the utopian optimism of the next generation. In its place, a fractured bureaucratic federation turning its back on those in need. For the first time, Star Trek ventured into a dark world that felt more dystopian than utopian, a reality far darker and more cynical than anything that had ever borne the Trek logo. From immigration policy to AI rights to authoritarian creep, Picard explored what happens when the Federation itself loses its way. Was this a bold evolution, or did it betray Star Trek's hopeful vision? Fans remain divided to this day. The message to the audience was clear. If a society as advanced and idyllic as the Federation was susceptible to rot from within, then surely our own society is not immune either. Star Trek Strange New Worlds attempts to take Star Trek back to its roots, recapturing the franchise's legacy of depicting a diverse and cooperative Federation. Chronologically taking place just before the original series, it emphasizes inclusivity and collaboration among its diverse crew members, reflecting the core values of the Star Trek universe. While staying true to the original spirit of exploration and unity, the show also addresses contemporary issues, ensuring that the narrative remains relevant to modern audiences. It's won fans by striking the perfect balance, avoiding the hyper-progressive tone of Discovery, and set in a Federation that isn't yet teetering on the depressing brink of authoritarian dystopia as Picard portrays. Make no mistake, this is a very dense and complex subject. It's hard to do it justice in a 15-minute video. And while we will revisit these themes and ideas in greater detail in future videos, if this is a subject that interests you, there are tons of books and other content available that dive deep into Star Trek, its history, and the role it played in shaping modern culture. Check out the video description, where you can find links that will direct you to the very best books on the subject. Whether or not you take a moment to examine our recommended reading list in the description, please take a quick moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel, The Real Agenda. And while you're there, leave a comment and get the discussion started. Whether you're a bona fide Trekkie, a casual fan, or just hate watching, we want to know how you feel about the optimistic, forward-looking voice that has consistently defined Star Trek and its vision for the future since it premiered in 1966. For nearly 60 years now, Star Trek has been a blueprint for progress, promoting themes of equality, diplomacy, and cooperation. The enduring success of the Star Trek franchise is unparalleled in the realms of television and film. Since its inception in 1966, Star Trek has expanded into a vast universe encompassing multiple television series, films, novels, comics, video games, and merchandise. Financially, the franchise has been a powerhouse. As of 2021, it has generated over $1.4 billion in box office revenue alone, placing it among the top 20 highest-grossing franchises in cinematic history. Beyond its financial achievements, Star Trek has cultivated a dedicated and passionate fan base. The franchise's optimistic portrayal of a future where diversity and cooperation are paramount has inspired countless individuals to pursue careers in science, engineering, and the arts. Notably, innovators like Martin Cooper, the inventor of the first handheld mobile phone, have cited Star Trek as a direct influence on their work. In terms of cultural impact, Star Trek's influence on the science fiction genre cannot be overstated. The franchise's introduction of diverse characters and its willingness to tackle pressing social issues have broken new ground, challenging outdated societal norms and sparking important conversations. This legacy of innovation and inclusivity continues to influence contemporary science fiction, cementing Star Trek's place as a cornerstone of the genre. For nearly 60 years, Star Trek has dared to ask big questions. Who are we? Who do we want to be? And how do we get there, together? And in doing so, it has boldly gone where no series or franchise has before. It has shaped reality itself. NASA scientists, engineers, activists, writers, innovators, they all share one thing in common. They were inspired by Star Trek. Because Star Trek isn't just about the future, it's about the present. It's about us, our dreams, our struggles, our potential. And in a time of growing division, that message is more important than ever. That's why it endures. And that's why it will live long and prosper for generations to come.